Thank you very much, Esther. I've worked with you, and so I will not risk standing here for more than the time you have allotted me. So I'll try to be very brief with my address. Distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed an honor for me to be asked to deliver the keynote speech at this very important forum. I would like, first of all, to congratulate the Cities Alliance and all the sponsors and partners for pulling together a wide range of distinguished urban scholars and practitioners to discuss Africa's urban transition and to chart the way forward toward effective and efficient management. As requested by the organizers, I will speak on the topic strengthening African urban research, and then we would have a discussion afterwards. Let me first of all start with an overview of Africa's urban transition, which I think all of us are familiar with. I will then discuss the role of research in building resilient and sustainable urban centers, and then close my speech by sharing with you some ideas that I think can contribute to making Africa's urban research more relevant to the changing needs of the continent. As you may have observed, the topic to discuss in this keynote speech entails a wide range of issues, and I hope to elaborate on these issues further during the panel discussions. Ladies and gentlemen, as of 2015, approximately 40% of the population in Africa lived in the urban areas. Only 18 out of the 56 countries in this continent have more urban than rural populations. In this regard, Africa remains predominantly rural. The urban population is, however, projected to increase to 45% by 2025 and further to 48% by 2030, according to estimates, which means that Africa will be one of the fastest growing in the world in terms of urban populations. In countries such as Algeria, Djibouti, Gabon, Libya, and Reunion, the urban population is estimated to account for almost 3/4 of the total population by 2025. Africa's transition to urban presents a host of opportunities for development. Previous studies have shown that no country is as prosperous as those who have gone through the process of industrialization. Urban transition, therefore, can be a catalyst and is indeed a catalyst for economic growth and development. The transition of this process, however, needs to be managed. For many African countries, this has been a big challenge. We see intensification of urban poverty, vulnerability, pressure on natural resources and amenities, aggravating environmental and climate change related issues, as well as governance of natural resources. For instance, research shows that by 2020, almost 7 out of every 10 residents in Africa will reside in informal settlements. These and many more factors contribute to making Africa the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and we have already had some discussions on that already. Based on the four stated challenges, the concerns of city managers and researchers border on how sustainable cities can be built from Africa's urban transition. This depends largely on urban research that could generate urban data that are required for urban planning and development. I will now want to touch on the role of research in building resilient and sustainable urban centers. Researchers, as we all know, are knowledge generators and providers. They provide reliable research and development statistics for planning and management of urban transitions. R&D, for instance, can promote an understanding of the complex interaction among economic, social, political, legal, and cultural forces that affect urban development. An understanding of these factors, therefore, can help urban managers to formulate evidence-based and relevant policies to respond to urban dynamics and their impact on the development of urban areas. This is affirmed by the United Nations New Urban Agenda that posits that research and development activities can stimulate new planning methods and systems to contribute to a changing city structure and designing of compact cities, whichever way you interpret it. In this regard, priority could be given to the collection of and use of data from communities through city to national level population changes. And we see slum dwellers doing a bit of this in many countries. The importance of research to city development is without doubt, and we all know the benefits that we gain from this. It has implications not only for investments in activities that promote research and development, but also those that build and retain human capacity for R&D purposes. Let's look at some of the present status of urban research and development in Africa. African urban research themes have been influenced by global trends and also shifts in paradigms. These research themes have evolved from examination of urban issues in the 1960s through informal economic activities in towns and cities and rural poverty in the 1970s, to urban local government through decentralization in the 1980s. In the 90s, African urban research themes and focus became indigenized, and the trend focused on projects that were oriented towards the agenda of many development partners. Urban research in Africa in recent times exhibit major differences among geographical regions. For instance, in Anglophone West Africa, urban research has focused primarily on urban sustainability and health in the context of rapid urbanization and widespread poverty. Urban research in Southern Africa has given less attention to health, environment, and population studies, and more attention on more balanced research that cover a wide range of disciplines. A good proportion of these studies are based on cases with ultimate intention of influencing policy. And the Association of African Planning Schools, for example, chose one of the themes of carrying out research that will change the urban research agenda. Areas of emphasis include migration planning and governance, environmental management, and urban inequalities, as well as urban economic development. In East Africa, urban research focuses primarily on issues of waste management, water management, environmental management, and health and demographics. The above variations in urban research notwithstanding, broad points of commonality emerge. Dumini in 2013 identified the following areas of commonality, although the author admits there are specificities. These include, number one, urban spatial development, governance and planning, urban economics, land markets, land access and land tenure, water, sanitation and health, climate change, conflict, and physical security. Now, what are some of the contributions of African institutions in urban research in Africa? Ladies and gentlemen, I want to discuss with you the contributions of research institutions, universities, and businesses in Africa in addressing the research themes identified earlier on. The universities and their affiliate institutions, with support from development partners, have driven the urban research activities across the continent. The results of their studies are published in various scholarly journals and other scientific media. The research institutions also play economic roles in urban areas in Africa. These institutions generate knowledge, innovative ideas, and technology development, and transfer them to support urban development. The research institutions impact on small businesses by providing them with qualified workforce and common services like market research, financial consulting, job training, and venture investment. The researchers are, however, unable to provide research results to inform decision-making for the management of Africa's urban transition. According to UNESCO, weak research investments in Africa have made research results even more scarce. Except South Africa, no African country invests more than 1% of its GDP in research and development. It has been observed that low investment in research in general impacted negatively on investments in urban research in the 1980s. This trend, unfortunately, continues to this day. Studies have shown that science publications from developing countries, for example, accounted for 20% of the world's scientific publications. Asia contributes about 14.8% of this proportion. The remaining 5.2% is shared among other developing countries in Africa, the Caribbean, and the Pacific. This culminates into shortages of data required by city managers and other governance people responsible for governing urban centers, the necessary data to be able to build resilient and sustainable urban centers. Ladies and gentlemen, besides the limited investments in research and development in Africa, government funding of research activities has stagnated despite the increasing cost of research activities. For instance, the funding gap in institutions of higher learning in Ghana has ranged between 40% in 2011 through to 79% in 2012 to 49% in 2013. So you see a trend that is not dependable. The funding gap reduced to 47% in 2014 and further to 41% in 2015, according to research. Research staff are compelled to rely on international funding or consultancies to finance their research activities. These lead to human capital flight. The research and development workforce in Africa, therefore, pay much attention to extra income generating opportunities to complement their low salaries, and I think we've heard this again and again. We have instances where lecturers are supposed to lecture for 16 weeks, and for 8 out of the 16, they are out doing consultancies. The potential for addressing some of these problems are multi- and interdisciplinary structures for research, education, and policy development. In 60% of universities in Africa, work continues to be done to be able to resolve some of these issues. Development partners are also available to partner the African-based research institutions to manage urban development through research and development. This is evident in the continued support for urban research from the World Bank Group and Ford Foundation, to mention just a few. These research institutions are then able to participate in policy formulation and fulfill various advisory functions in the society. The fear is the lack of continuity of the urban research problems by African-based institutions after the exit of foreign support. I now want to go to measures to strengthen African research capacity and centers. I propose an integrated approach to strengthening African urban research capacity. My thoughts have been influenced by the interrelationships among the factors that have hampered African urban research. The first proposal is that African research institutions should collaborate and with other stakeholders in the areas of shared infrastructure, academic entrepreneurship, human resource trading, and transfer. This proposed framework will not only minimize the effects of limited funding, but also the human capacity constraints that hamper research in the subsequent uptake of the results for developmental purposes. The drivers to establishing the proposed collaboration are good governance practices such as transparency, accountability, that needs to be exhibited by both central and local government institutions, as well as research institutions based in Africa. Ability to attract external assistance for urban research is very much contingent on how enabling the urban environment is made. So on this page, we'll see the proposal which I think would help us to be able to further urban research And I'm looking at relationships, mobility, and transfer. And under relationships, I'm talking about research partnership, research services, and then shared infrastructure. And then the remarks column show you the specific actions that need to be taken under that. Under mobility, I'm talking about academic entrepreneurship, human resource training and transfer. And then specifically on transfer, I'm talking about commercialization of intellectual property, scientific publications, and informal interactions. Ladies and gentlemen, it is sad to note that many African research institutions have been late in coming to the table, but the time is now for us to be able to take action. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have been able to demonstrate the significant contributions African research works have made to the generation of knowledge on contemporary urban development issues. And I've also highlighted the constraints that we need to overcome to be able to take the agenda forward. In our discussions, we can further arrange and see where we go from here. Thank you very much. I've seen the red card.
Yes. Thank you.